So I've had some further thoughts as to what made Jerome Valeska so damn special. Firstly, thank God we're done with that. Behold the new face of Channel Pup. Will is dead. Long live Will Meyer. It would seem that my foolish brother has spent much of his YouTube career simply whining about the death of his favourite character, and disguising these rants as analytical critiques, deceptive but juvenile nevertheless. In this video, I'm going to pinpoint where exactly he went wrong and why Gotham's Joker twist is indeed smarter than he is. Not that it's hard. In his previous video, he complained that Jeremiah lacked the thematic weight that Jerome did. Jerome's weaknesses was his sense of hubris and showmanship, which led him to take more risks which ultimately resulted in his demise. While Will was correct about that Jerome was more intelligent than people tend to give him credit for, his character lacked foresight, which is why his tenure as the Gotham Joker met its end. Now here's where Will's judgment is flawed. He ignorantly assumed that once Jeremiah was gassed after Jerome's death, that he would take on the role of Gotham's Joker and step into Jerome's shoes and all. All of this because of Jeremiah's Joker-like appearance, red lips and white face. But ultimately this story is far more intricate and complex than he gives it credit for. Understandably, this was supposed to be Jerome Valeska enacting his final revenge upon Gotham and his family lineage by immediately replacing himself with a copy, but here is where the show outsmarted silly old Willsy. Jeremiah would not go on to become the Joker until the middle of Season 5 after his drop into Ace Chemicals. Until then, he was ultimately a criminal genius that displayed some traits of the Joker that he would go on to become, but very much remained sane. While sadistic and cruel, ultimately Jeremiah after his gassing was sane, as the show made very clear in marketing and dialogue. However, people like Will would complain that his behaviour wasn't jokery enough. Well, here's the thing, Willsy. They never said that either of the Valeska brothers are the Joker. You're ultimately just a sourpuss about the fact that they're not being explicit about your favourite villain. And to say that Jerome was the superior Joker? Well, I got news for you, buddy. We met Jerome at the destruction of his insanity and saw him fall because of it, but it's not like he started off as a maniac. It's not fair to compare the beginnings of Jeremiah's criminal career to the end of Jerome's. So if you wish to make this comparison, then look to the final characterization of Jeremiah in the season finale of Gotham in a few weeks' time. The Joker's story in Gotham is even more clever than you realize, though. In the latter half of Season 4, we discover that Jeremiah has been on the run from Jerome and trying to keep him out of his life, but completely in denial about how much he instigated of his own fears in Jerome. His constant desire to hide from Jerome is a metaphor for Jeremiah hiding and running from the inevitability and indomitable force of his own toxic mind. The idea that there was a part of him that wanted to hold on to morality is accentuated in his admiration of Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is idealistic as far as Jeremiah is concerned. He represents the man that Jeremiah has tried to cling on to in his escape from his own inner madness, which is represented by Jerome. What I'm saying here is that Jeremiah's story is a metaphor for a sick mind. He's fully aware that Jerome is a part of him and that he's desperately trying to escape, and he clings on to his own idealistic views of Bruce Wayne. Perhaps one of the most prevalent moments in this story being when Jeremiah comes face to face with Jerome in the bunker halls. Jeremiah thought he had escaped from Jerome for good, but had taken every possible measure to shut him out of his life. But then Jerome still made it back inside, and once Jerome is fully a part of Jeremiah, Bruce no longer wants anything to do with Jeremiah. This is representative of Jeremiah's idealistic view of himself drifting away. Unlike Jerome, who was driven mad by Jeremiah's actions, Jeremiah has always been the Joker. He's just not realized it yet. What's also brilliant is the inclusion of a shot of Jeremiah and Jerome Valeska face to face. It's like Jeremiah is looking at his true self, his future, his destiny. The contrast between Jeremiah's fresh face, his formal dress sense, his neatly combed hair, opposite Jerome's horrifically disfigured face, chaotic spiky hair, and far more old-fashioned, more gangster-inspired suit. The cinematography and imagery here is brilliant, even down to the arrow sign pointing to Jerome that says, "The End," which could mean a number of things. Perhaps this represents the end of the road for Jeremiah Valeska's sanity, while also indicating the end of Jerome Valeska with his death. So, you thought Jerome was a better Joker than Jeremiah, Wilsey? Well, idiot, nobody ever said he was the Joker. You'll have to wait until the finale to see that. The story of Jeremiah Valeska is the story of a brilliant man who's trying to cling on to his own sanity, and sees Bruce as something of a manifestation of his true sanity, to the point that the more that he tries to hold on, the more desperate his measures become. And finally, this is what results to him falling under. Him dropping into the chemical vat is symbolic of his sanity finally drowning. And you know what my absolute favourite part is? When we see Jeremiah comatose and brain damaged in the hospital after his fall, Bruce says, Jeremiah is no longer a threat. An absolutely genius use of cinematic irony. Jeremiah Valeska is the middle ground between the clear-cut insanity of Jerome Valeska and the clear-cut moral good of Bruce Wayne. And the fact that Jeremiah is the midway point makes his story more investable. It gives us some idea that maybe, just maybe, he could come out okay in the end. And then when he does become the Joker, it makes it that much more emotionally engaging. If Jerome Valeska had gone on to become the Joker, what we'd ultimately have is a predictable but enjoyable story. With Jeremiah, we have something far more investable for every audience member. And ultimately, people are just upset that the man they thought was the Joker wasn't. Okay, I'm gonna stop you there. Will's back. Okay, well, he made some valid points, ultimately, yes, and I won't try to negate any of those. But can we acknowledge that outside of a variety of incredible sequences during Jerome's arc at the end of Season 4, much of Jeremiah's criminal career was driven by his own expositional dialogue, which was mostly just him droning on about his brother? Jerome's story has been a much more involving experience for the audience. It generally feels like we were told Jeremiah's story, but we didn't get to experience it in the way that we did with Jerome. Maybe we would have done if the series wasn't only getting a 12-episode run for its final season. I really do not think that Season 5 was ever intended to be the end. The thing is, with Jerome's story, we saw and experienced this kid grow from boy to monster, and everything felt so naturally influenced. Jerome Valeska feels like the true child of Gotham City, which works well juxtaposed with Bruce Wayne, who's more like the idealistic son of Gotham City. It's like Bruce Wayne is what Gotham City wants to represent, Jerome Valeska is what Gotham City does represent. It still holds a great deal of thematic weight and is a great story. Jeremiah's story is brilliant, but I feel as though this story could have been done with another character, because ultimately his story retreads a lot of familiar ground that Jerome's story had already done in frankly more exciting ways. And you can say Jerome isn't the Joker all you want, you can't ignore the fact that he's featured in multiple recreations of classic Joker stories in Gotham, carries a Joker card with him, and basically is, to all intensive purposes, the Joker. One could argue that he doesn't have the intellect of Jeremiah required to produce the sheer wealth of villainous pranks and schemes that the Joker would go on to do in other media. However, it's often left ambiguous as to how the Joker even achieves this in the first place, and in Jerome's Season 4 arc, we do see that he is resourceful enough to achieve these things through other people and assistance. Truth be told, I can accept that Gotham outsmarted me with its treatment of the Joker. I can appreciate the amount of bait and switch and the fact that I've remained invested for as long as I have. It's outstanding storytelling. This is arguably the best possible Joker origin story we could possibly have, because it's full of bait and switch, it's full of questions, you're constantly questioning where's it gonna go next, and when it does finally go in the way that it does, there is a good deal of emotional investment, but I feel like there would have been far more emotional investment in it, the kind that the producers probably wanted us to have if Jeremiah were simply introduced as a protagonist much earlier on. And if Jerome weren't quite such a complete Joker experience as he was. I just feel like it's quite a callous treatment to take a character people love with an outstanding performance from Cameron Monaghan and just dismiss it as a plot device for another character, even if that character is still expertly portrayed by the same actor. In the way that this story is told, it feels like even if Jerome hadn't appeared, Jeremiah still would have gone insane anyway. It wouldn't have had quite such a thematic weight to it, but ultimately, Jerome was actually unnecessary as far as this story is concerned, realistically. I just feel like, had Jeremiah been introduced a lot sooner as a form of protagonist, perhaps a character that the GCPD would interview in regards to Jerome during the whole Maniacs thing, we could have had a far more compelling story. We could have seen, like, maybe at the very end of The Last Laugh, when they showed all those kids laughing at the TV and everything, like the whole Joker influence thing. How amazing would it have been if we had like a shot showing Jeremiah watching those TV screens, looking all concerned and stuff. Maybe treated him as a mystery character, and I understand that this was probably a new idea when they came round to Season 4, but I feel like this is what they wanted to achieve. Perhaps it would have been too confusing to have Cameron Monaghan, fresh face, die as Jerome in Season 2, and then show us another fresh-faced Cameron Monaghan. I think maybe people would have just assumed that was Jerome Valeska again, or maybe Jerome in disguise, but then again it would have gotten people asking even more questions, which I feel like is what they wanted from us. If that's too confusing, they could have maybe done it at the end of The Gentle Art of Making Enemies, where Jerome is apprehended, and Jeremiah is just watching this, because then you've got the cut-off face distinction. But I feel like it would have been even more interesting if maybe we'd had the reaction at the end of The Last Laugh, and then shown his I'm back transmission, and then we saw Jeremiah reacting in panic of, oh god, will he not stay dead? I think we would have had something perfect if they'd done this. I would have nothing bad to say about that. The thing is, Jeremiah Valeska is a character required to complete the Joker's story, and the transition from Jerome to Jeremiah is comparable to poetic enjambment, where one stanza leads to almost flawlessly into another. However, I feel like if this route were necessary, then from the start Jerome should have felt less like a complete rendition of the Joker. He's a charismatic showman, but at the same time he's cunning and clever. It makes Jeremiah feel rather unnecessary, which is what has prompted the volume of video essays I've done on this topic. There's a lot to talk about with Gotham's Joker story, arguably more than any other story in Gotham, which is brilliant. Personally, I feel like we didn't need to totally dispose of Jerome entirely to complete the Joker story with Jeremiah. Heck, in its heyday, Gotham was all about new takes on familiar foes, and they're not allowed to use the Joker, so what if they just remained referred to as the Valeska brothers, and they were treated as an homage to the Joker, but overall a new concept? This would have been so interesting, having two Jokers to bounce off of one another, and could have made for some amazing dialogue between the two. The Joker, but as a double act. Jeremiah being the brains, and Jerome being that crazy driving force of the duo. Maybe they could put their differences aside. It would be amazing. Truth be told, I think Jeremiah's story is great. I miss that extremely fun, must-see B-movie horror that Jerome brought to the show. The point I tried to make with this video is that in spite of the fact that I do have my issues with how Jerome Valeska was ultimately treated as a character, I do still feel that Gotham did a spectacular job with this story. Do you want to know something really funny and really coincidental, though? Is when I was about 17 years old and in college, I wrote a script called Testament, believing it to be my magnum opus at the time, and it was all about a man who had gone insane and used the fictional character of the Joker as a coping mechanism, and he had basically become a Joker of the real world. However, he laments that he doesn't have a Batman in the real world, and therefore he doesn't have a purpose. He'd be telling his story on an abandoned theatre stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of empty seats, and we get lots of flashbacks to his past involving abusive parents and a goody two-shoes brother. Ultimately, the stick that broke the camel's back was a retail job, leading him to steal a load of bleach, break into an old woman's house, get naked, and bathe in the bleach. Guess which writer hated his job at the time? What transpires is that when his parents die, his brother goes insane and starts kidnapping himself a surrogate family that he violently tries to turn into his original family, be it physically or mental abuse. When the Joker tracks down his brother, he discovers a new sense of purpose, but the two end up stabbing each other in the back. Now, I'm fully aware that my idea here was rubbish. I was a dumb teenager. However, the point I'm trying to make here is that I love Gotham. This show feels legitimately like it was made for me. We seem to share the same ideas. In spite of how frustratingly Jerome was treated as a character, my concerns about Season 5's pacing and the sheer volume of filler we've had in this season so far, I guess you can't win them all, but it's amazing. Well, I hope this video was a fun change of pace as far as my usual Gotham stuff goes, and has demonstrated a little objective critical thinking this time. How do you feel about the way the twist has been handled, and which Valeska brother do you prefer? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you're new to Channel Pup, be sure to subscribe for more Gotham-based content. If you're not new here and are already subscribed, then it's great to see you. I've missed you. How have you been? Comment below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.